Buying my own ranch had been my biggest dream ever since I was little. I'd spent years saving every single penny, working extra shifts, and saying no to fancy vacations. Finally, after what felt like forever, the day had come. I signed the papers, got the keys, and officially became the owner of a beautiful piece of land with a cozy house right in the middle of it. The feeling was unreal. It was more than just owning a house. It was owning a piece of my future, a place where I could build memories and finally relax. I imagined myself sitting on the porch, watching the sunset, and just breathing in the fresh country air. It was going to be my little slice of heaven, far away from the noise and stress of the city. The ranch needed a little work, but I was ready to pour my heart and soul into making it perfect. The moving truck rumbled down the long, dusty driveway, kicking up a cloud of dirt that momentarily obscured the house. My heart pounded with excitement as I followed behind in my car, loaded with boxes of essentials. This was it, the culmination of all that hard work. As I pulled up behind the truck, I took a moment to just soak it all in. The sun was shining, the birds were singing, and the air smelled like wildflowers and freshly cut grass. It was even better than I had imagined. I hopped out of the car, stretched my legs, and took a deep breath. This was going to be amazing. A fresh start in my very own place. I felt an incredible sense of accomplishment wash over me. The years of sacrifice had been worth it. Now it was time to make this house a home. Just as I was about to start unloading the car, a woman appeared from across the street. She marched purposefully towards me, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. She had short, blonde hair and wore a crisp, white blouse. "Hello," she said, her voice sharp and a little too loud. "I'm Susan, the president of the Homeowners Association." She paused, her eyes scanning the moving truck and the boxes stacked on the porch. "I don't recognize you. Are you new here?" I smiled, trying to be friendly. "Yes, I just bought the place. I'm so excited to finally be here." Her expression didn't soften. "Oh, really?" she said, her tone laced with suspicion. "We weren't notified of any new owners. Mind telling me what you think you're doing?" I was taken aback by her accusatory tone. "I bought the ranch from Mr. Henderson," I explained patiently. "The sale closed last week. I have all the paperwork inside." "Paperwork?" she scoffed. "That could be anything. I need to see proof. Official proof. Deed, title, something that shows you actually own this property." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Seriously?" I asked, trying to keep my voice level. "I just got here. I'm trying to move in. Can't this wait?" "No, it cannot wait," she insisted, her eyes narrowed. "We have rules in this community. We need to verify who owns what. I'm not going to let you just waltz in here and do whatever you want." Her voice was rising, attracting the attention of the movers. This was not the welcome I had imagined. Ignoring her, I turned to the movers. "Okay, guys," I said, trying to sound calm. "Let's start with the boxes labeled bedroom and get those inside first." I grabbed a box myself and started towards the front door. Susan stepped directly in front of me, blocking my path. "I'm not finished with you," she said, her voice tight with anger. "I understand that," I replied, trying to maneuver around her. "But I have a lot to do, and I can't stand here arguing with you all day. I promise I'll get the paperwork to you as soon as I can find it. But right now, I need to get my stuff inside." I managed to sidestep her and continued towards the door, hoping she would finally get the hint. It felt ridiculous to have to explain myself while trying to move into my own house. As I set the box down inside the house, I heard Susan's voice rise again. "I've had enough of this," she declared loudly. I peeked out the door and saw her pulling out her phone. "What are you doing?" I asked, a knot forming in my stomach. "I'm calling the police," she said, her eyes gleaming with what looked like triumph. "I suspect you're stealing from this property. You have no proof you belong here, and I'm not going to let you get away with it." My jaw dropped. "You're calling the police?" I repeated, incredulous. "Over this? I just bought this place." "That's what all thieves say," she retorted, already dialing. "The police will sort it out." I couldn't believe this was happening. My dream was turning into a nightmare. I decided the best thing to do was ignore her and continue moving my belongings inside. Arguing with her would only make the situation worse. I went back outside and started directing the movers again. Just keep bringing the boxes inside, I instructed, trying to project an air of calm despite the turmoil I felt inside. Don't worry about her. She's just confused. I could see the movers were uneasy, glancing nervously at Susan, who was now pacing back and forth on the sidewalk, talking loudly into her phone. I felt a wave of embarrassment wash over me. This was not how I wanted to meet my new neighbors. I just hoped the police would arrive quickly and clear up this ridiculous misunderstanding before things escalated further. I busied myself with carrying smaller items, trying to avoid eye contact with Susan. Suddenly, the distant wail of sirens pierced the air. My heart sank. It was really happening. A moment later, 2 police cars pulled up to the curb, their lights flashing, casting an eerie glow on the otherwise peaceful street. The movers stopped working, and all eyes turned towards the police cars. I felt a surge of anger and frustration. This was completely absurd. All I wanted to do was move into my new house, and now I was being treated like a criminal. 2 officers emerged from the cars, their expressions serious. Susan immediately rushed towards them, pointing at me and gesticulating wildly. I took a deep breath, trying to compose myself. It was time to explain my side of the story and hopefully put an end to this ridiculous charade. I walked towards the officers, ready to defend my right to be on my own property. "Good afternoon, officers," I said, trying to maintain a calm demeanor. "I'm the new owner of this property. I just closed on the sale last week." One of the officers, a tall man with a kind face, turned to me. "Ma'am, we received a call about a possible theft in progress. Can you explain what's going on?" "Of course," I said, gesturing towards the house. "I have the deed and all the closing documents inside. I can show them to you right now." Susan, who was standing nearby, interjected, "Don't believe her. She's probably forged those documents." I ignored her and addressed the officers again. "I assure you, everything is legitimate. I'll go get the paperwork." I turned and headed back towards the house, eager to retrieve the proof and put an end to this ridiculous situation once and for all. My hands were shaking slightly, but I tried to focus on remaining calm and cooperative. I rummaged through the boxes until I found the folder containing all the important documents. I quickly located the deed and the closing statement and hurried back outside to show the officers. "Here you go," I said, handing them the documents. "This is the official deed with my name on it, and this is the closing statement from the title company." The officers examined the documents carefully, comparing them to their records. After a few minutes, the tall officer looked up at Susan. "Ma'am," he said, his voice stern, "these documents appear to be legitimate. It seems there's been a misunderstanding." He turned back to me. "I apologize for the inconvenience, ma'am. Everything seems to be in order." I felt a huge wave of relief wash over me. Finally, some common sense. The tall officer turned his attention back to Susan, his expression hardening. "Ma'am," he said sternly, "calling the police with a false report is a serious offense. You wasted our time and resources with this unnecessary call. I suggest you refrain from making such calls in the future without proper evidence." Susan's face flushed red with anger. But I wasn't notified about any new owners. How was I supposed to know?" she sputtered, her voice shaking. "That's not an excuse for making false accusations," the officer replied, his voice unwavering. "The proper course of action would have been to inquire politely, not to immediately assume criminal activity." He gave her a pointed look before turning back to me. I felt a small sense of satisfaction seeing her finally get what she deserved. Despite the officer's reprimand, Susan remained defiant. "I still don't believe those documents are real," she huffed, crossing her arms. "They could be easily faked. And besides," she added, looking me up and down with a sneer, "this neighborhood has standards. I doubt someone like you could afford a place like this." I couldn't believe she was still going. "Are you serious?" I asked, my voice rising in disbelief. "Even after the police confirmed everything, you're still going to be this way?" The tall officer sighed, clearly losing his patience. He stepped closer to Susan, his voice low and warning. It was clear she was pushing her luck. I braced myself, wondering what she would say or do next. This woman seemed determined to make my move-in day as miserable as possible. "Ma'am," the officer said, his voice firm and leaving no room for argument. "I need you to understand that continuing to harass this resident could result in further legal action. Making false accusations and wasting police resources is not only irresponsible, but it's also against the law. If you continue to cause problems, we will have to take further action." Susan finally seemed to realize she had gone too far. Her face paled slightly, and she took a step back. I understand," she mumbled, avoiding eye contact with the officer. "Good," the officer replied. "Now, I suggest you let this resident move in peacefully and handle any further concerns through the proper channels." He gave her one last warning look before turning to me. It seemed the message had finally gotten through. Susan reluctantly backed down, but her eyes still burned with resentment. As the officer spoke to me, I could see her glaring daggers in my direction and muttering something under her breath that sounded suspiciously like, "This isn't over." I tried to ignore her, focusing on what the officers were saying. It was clear she wasn't happy about being proven wrong, but at least she was finally ceasing her direct accusations. However, her continued animosity made me uneasy. It was hard to shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of a long and unpleasant neighborly relationship. I wondered what other antics she had in store for me. I made a mental note to install security cameras as soon as possible. This move-in was turning out to be far more stressful than I ever imagined. The tall officer turned to me with a genuine look of apology. "Again, ma'am, I sincerely apologize for the inconvenience this has caused you," he said. "We appreciate your cooperation. We'll be on our way now." With that, the officers returned to their cars, the flashing lights were turned off, and the police cars slowly drove away, leaving a strange silence in their wake. The movers resumed their work, but the atmosphere had definitely shifted. The excitement I had felt earlier had been replaced by a sense of unease and a lingering feeling of violation. I couldn't shake the image of Susan's hateful glare. This was not the peaceful beginning I had envisioned. My dream ranch was starting to feel more like a battleground. I took a deep breath, trying to regain my composure. I still had a lot of unpacking to do. I stood there for a moment, just letting the reality of the situation sink in. I was officially a homeowner, but my first few hours in my new home had been a complete disaster. The excitement I had felt earlier was gone, replaced by a heavy feeling of disappointment and frustration. This was not the welcoming, friendly neighborhood I had hoped for. I felt shaken by Susan's unwarranted hostility and the fact that she had actually called the police on me. What kind of a person does that? It was hard to believe that someone could be so quick to judge and accuse a complete stranger. I knew I couldn't let her ruin my dream, but I also couldn't deny that her actions had cast a dark shadow over this fresh start. I resolved to not let her win. I would be a good neighbor, despite her best efforts. As the moving truck continued to unload, I noticed a few neighbors starting to emerge from their houses, drawn by the commotion. Some kept their distance, watching with curious expressions, but a few approached me with hesitant smiles. "Welcome to the neighborhood," a kind-looking woman said, extending her hand.
I'm Carol.
"I'm so sorry about all the trouble with Susan. She can be a bit much." Another neighbor, an older man with a friendly face, chimed in. "Don't let her get you down. She's been causing problems for years. We're all used to it, unfortunately." I was surprised and relieved by their supportive words. "Thank you," I said, feeling a glimmer of hope. "I appreciate that. It's been quite a welcome." It was reassuring to know that not everyone in the neighborhood shared Susan's attitude. Maybe this fresh start wasn't completely ruined after all. As the movers continued their work, Carol and the older gentleman, whose name I learned was George, shared more about Susan and her reputation within the community. Apparently, she was known for being overly strict with HOA rules and regulations, often finding minor infractions to complain about and generally making life difficult for everyone. "She's always been like that," Carol explained, shaking her head. "Thinks she's the queen of the neighborhood and everyone has to follow her rules." George added, "She's been trying to get people fined for the smallest things. A misplaced garbage can, a slightly overgrown lawn. It's exhausting." Hearing about Susan's history made me feel a little better about the situation. It wasn't just me. She treated everyone this way. But it also made me realize I was in for a potentially long and unpleasant battle. It was time to prepare for war. Despite the knowledge that I might be heading into a long-term conflict with Susan, I resolved to focus on the positive. I wouldn't let her ruin my dream. I decided the best approach was to kill her with kindness and prove her wrong about me. I would be the best neighbor this community had ever seen. I started by focusing on settling in, unpacking boxes, arranging furniture, and making the house feel like home. I also made a point to be extra diligent about following all the HOA rules, even the ones that seemed ridiculous. I wanted to give Susan absolutely no reason to complain. I was determined to win over the rest of the neighborhood and show them that I was a valuable addition to the community. It was time to put my best foot forward and turn this rocky start into a resounding success. I started working on the outside of the house, planting colorful flowers in the front garden to brighten up the place. I also spent time fixing up some minor issues with the property, like repainting the fence and repairing a loose shutter. I wanted to show everyone that I took pride in my home and cared about the appearance of the neighborhood. More importantly, I made an effort to meet the other neighbors. I baked cookies and went door to door, introducing myself and offering a sweet treat. Most people were warm and welcoming, happy to have a new face in the community. I learned their names, heard their stories, and started to build genuine connections. I even got a few invitations to neighborhood barbecues and potlucks. It felt like I was finally starting to find my place in this community, despite the initial rocky start. I eagerly participated in community events, like the annual neighborhood picnic and the holiday decorating contest. I brought delicious food, volunteered to help with setup and cleanup, and generally made myself available to contribute to the community spirit. I also used these opportunities to showcase the improvements I had made to the ranch. People complimented the colorful flower garden, the freshly painted fence, and the overall tidiness of the property. I could see that my efforts were paying off. Neighbors who had initially been wary of me were now starting to warm up and see me as a valuable member of the community. It felt good to be appreciated and to prove Susan wrong about me. I was slowly but surely building a positive reputation, one event at a time. Slowly but surely, I began to win over some of the neighbors who had initially been skeptical, influenced by Susan's negative portrayal of me. I noticed them starting to smile and wave when I passed by, engaging in friendly conversations, and even offering to help with various tasks around the ranch. One day, a neighbor named Martha confessed to me, "I have to admit, I wasn't sure about you at first. Susan made you sound like some kind of criminal, but you've proven her wrong. You're a wonderful addition to our community." Hearing those words meant the world to me. It validated all the effort I had put into being a good neighbor and showed that my actions were speaking louder than Susan's words. I was finally breaking through the wall of prejudice and building genuine relationships based on trust and respect. It was a victory, small but significant, in my ongoing battle against the HOA Karen. Despite my best efforts to be a model neighbor, Susan continued to make my life difficult. She would often make passive-aggressive comments when I saw her, like, "Those flowers are nice, but are they on the approved list?" Or, "I noticed your lawn was a quarter of an inch too long yesterday." She also started sending me official HOA violation notices for the most ridiculous things. A garbage can left out for an extra hour, a Christmas decoration that was too flashy, a car parked slightly over the line in my driveway. It was clear she was determined to find fault with everything I did, no matter how hard I tried to follow the rules. I felt like I was constantly walking on eggshells, waiting for her next attack. This woman was relentless. Realizing that Susan's behavior was escalating beyond simple neighborly disputes, I started meticulously documenting every interaction I had with her. I kept a detailed log of her passive-aggressive comments, the dates and times they were made, and any witnesses who were present. I also saved all the HOA violation notices she sent me, along with photos and videos proving that I was in compliance with the rules. Concerned that Susan's actions might constitute harassment, I decided to consult with a lawyer. After reviewing the evidence I had gathered, the lawyer agreed that Susan's behavior was bordering on harassment and advised me to continue documenting everything. He also suggested that I consider attending the next HOA meeting to address the issue directly. It was time to take a stand and put an end to Susan's reign of terror. Armed with my meticulously documented evidence, I attended the next HOA meeting. I was nervous but determined to address the ongoing issues with Susan's behavior. As I walked into the meeting room, I could feel Susan's eyes burning into me. The meeting started with routine announcements, but as soon as the floor was opened for resident concerns, I raised my hand. I have some serious concerns about the conduct of our HOA president. I began, my voice trembling slightly. I then proceeded to lay out all the evidence I had gathered, detailing Susan's unwarranted accusations, her passive-aggressive comments, and the frivolous HOA violations she had issued. I could see that many of the other residents were nodding in agreement, clearly familiar with Susan's tactics. This was it, the moment of truth. Would anyone stand with me? To my surprise and relief, several other neighbors spoke up, sharing their own stories of harassment and unfair treatment at the hands of Susan. Carol recounted how Susan had threatened to fine her for having a slightly different shade of paint on her front door. George described how Susan had repeatedly complained about his bird feeder, claiming it attracted unwanted wildlife. One by one, residents came forward, adding their voices to the growing chorus of discontent. It became clear that Susan's behavior was not an isolated incident. She had been abusing her power as HOA president for years, targeting anyone who didn't meet her impossibly high standards. The tide was turning. People were finally ready to stand up to the HOA Karen. I felt a surge of hope and determination. We could actually change things. Seeing the overwhelming support against her, one of the board members, a kind woman named Mrs. Davison, proposed a vote to remove Susan from her position as HOA president. The room erupted in applause. Susan, her face contorted with rage, tried to object, but her voice was drowned out by the cheers of the other residents. Mrs. Davison quickly called the vote, and the results were overwhelmingly in favor of removing Susan. I held my breath, my heart pounding in my chest. This was it. After months of stress and harassment, it was finally coming to an end. I glanced at Susan, who was now sitting silently, her eyes filled with fury. She knew she had lost. A collective sigh of relief swept through the room. The reign of the HOA Karen was finally over. With Susan out of the picture, the HOA members quickly nominated and elected a new president, Mrs. Davison, the kind woman who had proposed the vote to remove Susan. Mrs. Davison was known for her fairness and common sense, and everyone was confident that she would be a much more reasonable and approachable leader. The atmosphere in the meeting room immediately shifted. The tension that had been hanging in the air for so long dissipated, replaced by a sense of optimism and hope for a better future. It felt like a fresh start for the entire community. I could finally relax and enjoy my dream ranch without constantly worrying about being harassed and unfairly targeted. The nightmare was finally over. With Mrs. Davison at the helm, the atmosphere in the neighborhood began to transform. The constant tension and fear of arbitrary rule enforcement dissipated, replaced by a spirit of cooperation and understanding. Neighbors started helping each other out more, offering assistance with yard work, sharing tools, and generally fostering a sense of community. The HOA rules became more reasonable and less nitpicky, focusing on maintaining the overall appearance and safety of the neighborhood rather than micromanaging every little detail. People felt like they could finally relax and enjoy their homes without constantly worrying about getting a violation notice for some trivial infraction. The neighborhood was finally becoming the welcoming and friendly place I had always dreamed of. Looking back on that initial stressful experience, I realize how important it is to stand up for oneself, even when it's scary and uncomfortable. If I had simply caved to Susan's demands and accepted her unfair treatment, I would have been miserable and resentful. Standing up to her wasn't easy, but it was the right thing to do. It not only improved my own quality of life but also helped to create a better community for everyone. It taught me that one person can make a difference, even in the face of seemingly insurmountable opposition. It's a lesson I'll carry with me for the rest of my life. Don't let bullies win. Speak up, stand your ground, and fight for what's right. Now, years later, I can finally say that I truly feel like I belong here. I have wonderful neighbors, a beautiful home, and a strong sense of community. I spend my days tending to my garden, enjoying the peace and quiet of the countryside, and participating in neighborhood events. The initial obstacles I faced were challenging, but they ultimately made me stronger and more resilient. I learned the importance of standing up for myself, the power of community, and the value of perseverance. My dream ranch is now a reality, and it's even better than I ever imagined. I'm grateful for the lessons I learned along the way, even the difficult ones. This is home, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. The end.